As you see, I'm directing a very large institute of CNR. I think most of you are not Italian, so CNR is the largest research institution in Italy with about 10,000 employees. And I'm directing one of the 88 institutes of CNR, which has, as you see, 7 branches. So we are as headquartered in Umbria region, in Porano, close to Orvieto. But then we have 6 other branches in different parts of Italy, mainly central and south of Italy. It's about an institute having about 250 scientists working in different disciplines, but mainly in biodiversity, climate change, interactions, especially with a strong focus on environmental topics. We do have a lot of interactions with architects. As far as I understand, most of you are in the field of architecture, urban planning, engineering. We have a lot of interactions with them, especially in the urban environments and especially in the area of nature-based solutions, which will be my main focus for this talk. I'm also here with the head of the European Commission because I have been serving as expert on nature-based solutions since the launch, since 2015. And I'm also speaking about this huge initiative, which is called National Biodiversity Future Center. I will show you a few slides. This is an initiative funded by the Recovery and Resilience Plan in Italy, which is basically the largest initiative ever funded in Italy, but I would say in Europe on biodiversity, with more than 2,000 scientists put together. So I think I will put together the nature-based solution world and also how this is linked with the nature restoration law, which you know is a very important regulation which has been recently launched by the European Commission. And indeed, I will start just from this slide, showing you how basically European Commission. I think most of you are from Europe. Can you remind me if this you're mainly Europeans or also abroad?
Yes, we are all from Europe. We have from Poland, Czech Republic, Portugal, and Greece. And the Netherlands.
Okay. Okay, so that's very relevant for all of you. So European Commission has been always, I would say, in the last 20, 30 years at the forefront of environmental protection, I would say, and especially a lot of policies on biodiversity protection and soil and air pollution. As you see, starting from the European Green Deal in 2020, you can imagine that in parallel with a pandemic outbreak, there was such a long investment by the European Commission on these policies. So the EU biodiversity strategy in 2020 and a zero pollution strategy following, and a lot of attention also to the soil strategies. And finally, last year, we arrived to the approval of the natural restoration law, which has been really a milestone in nature protection in Europe. You probably have heard that there was a long debate. A lot of countries were against, basically, including Italy. That was because there was the perception that this was mainly a cost for the society, for most of the member countries. And so I think what we have to do as people working in this field, we have to consider that we have to show the stakeholders, policymakers, citizens, everyone, that this is really an opportunity and not really a cost. And the nature-based solution area is very much connected with the nature restoration law, as you will see in the next slides. So here in the box that you see on the left, on the blue box, you can see what are the main targets of the nature restoration law. It's a very ambitious law, honestly. Some people say it's utopic. I mean, some of the targets are surely not reachable by 2030. But I think it's very important, and I quite agree with those people. Probably some of the targets are too ambitious, but I think that it's very important that we start the path, that we start to work on that. And even if we are not reaching those targets in 2030, we might reach those in 2050 or 2060. So that's very important that we are starting the process. Here you see in the box some of the most important targets. The Natural Restoration Law is dealing with all the environments, terrestrial, urban, marine environments. So for instance, in urban environment, which I suppose is one of your main focuses, there is a very important target to reach a minimum of 10% tree canopy cover in European cities. But for instance, there are targets also for forest, to have a healthier forest with improved biodiversity. There is a very important target to restore free-flowing rivers, 25,000 kilometers at European level by 2030. There is an important target in terms of reversing the decline of pollinators, which is also a strong focus in urban environment. Overall, we have a target of restoring at least 20% of EU land and sea by 2030, and then other targets, 30%, 50% of restoration to be reached in the following decades. Very ambitious targets. But even if they are very ambitious, as I repeat, I think it's important that we start the process. One big point which I think we should point out to our stakeholders, to our policymakers, is that restoration law will produce important benefits and will produce value. We deal and speak in terms of ecosystem services, and in particular, these are values which are estimated by the World Economic Forum. So it's not just really the scientific communities giving these numbers. They estimate a value of 1.86 trillion euros by restoration by 2050, which means about 8 to 38 return for every euro invested in restoration programs. As you may imagine, this economic evaluation is quite difficult. We have been working a lot in the last few years on that, because there is a lot of attention on that. But as you understand, that there is a problem in some cases to calculate the value of externalities. For instance, I give you an example. 1 ton of carbon, we know quite well how much is the value because there is a market for CO2, okay? But for instance, for air pollution, how much is the value of absorbing or filtering 1 ton of ozone or 1 ton of air pollutant? Is very, very difficult to estimate, because you have to calculate the externalities for how much is the decrease of hospitalization rate and so on, just to give you an example. But anyway, I think the value is very important, from 8 to 38 return as a value. And we have another estimate by the World Economic Forum, about $44 trillion, depending on the ecosystem services from the functionality of the various habitats. This is a topic which has been discussed also in the recent COP on biodiversity. We had the last one in Cali, in Colombia, at the end of last year, which was finalized in Rome in February this year, 2025. And they discussed a lot about the value of nature, the value of restoration, the value of nature-based solution, and even for the first time, they discussed to introduce a kind of taxation for the companies, for the private companies dealing with biodiversity and taking profit from biodiversity. They started to speak of 1% of taxation on the profits of the companies using biodiversity. Just to give you an example, how much attention now is worldwide on these themes, also from the financial point of view. If you read the nature restoration law, you will find very, very often the reference to the nature-based solutions that you see highlighted here in yellow. And you find the reference to nature-based solution in most of articles. We have articles dealing with freshwater ecosystems, with marine ecosystems, urban ecosystems, on pollinators, agroecosystems, forest ecosystems. In most of these articles, you find a reference to the nature-based solution as one of the best approaches and tools to implement the nature restoration law. Now, the game is in the hands of the member states who have to realize national restoration plans. We are giving our contribution now. We're starting to interact with the Ministry of Environment, which is, I think in all countries, is the institution which has the responsibility for the restoration plans. And then there will be a role by the scientific communities in also starting monitoring, reporting, and review plans. So it will be a long work from now onwards in the next, I would say, 2 decades, probably for 20, 30 years, because even if most of the targets are now set for 2030, we say that they are very ambitious, so probably we will see going on until 2050, until 2060, with different kinds of targets. So what are these nature-based solutions? Now the official definition is this one by United Nations. In reality, nature-based solutions have been launched by European Commission in 2015. I had the pleasure and the honor to serve as expert, basically already in 2015, 2016. But then we had a long, let's say, pressure also at the United Nations level. I was representing myself, the Commission, the European Commission, in the United Nations. And basically, we showed the importance of nature-based solution. And finally, thanks to this strong pressure, the United Nations launched the topic of nature-based solutions. So now is worldwide, is a priority at the world level. And if you see the keywords in this definition, we are dealing with protection, conservation, restoration of natural or modified terrestrial, freshwater, coastal, marine ecosystems. And the most important keywords are the following ones: addressing social, economic, environmental challenges. So the purpose of using nature-based solution is providing benefits to the society and to nature at the same time. I suggest, if you're interested, to go on this website. This is OPLA website. It's the recognized platform by the European Commission, which put together case studies, good practices. It was born as an official platform of the European Commission, but now it includes also case studies from outside Europe. And this slide is quite old, so now the number of case studies is even bigger than the numbers you see here. So it's really a very good platform, repository of information. And if you're interested, I really suggest you to go have a look and learn. So the big concept of nature-based solution is related, as I said, to the ecosystem services. The big advantage, now you as architect engineering, maybe you might disagree with me, but if you compare with more technological solution, the advantage of nature-based solution is that they usually provide multiple services. Even if I focus or have as a target one specific ecosystem services, let's take, for instance, the urban microclimate, which is, we know, reducing the heat island effect or absorbing carbon. I mean, I mainly focus on environmental ones because I come from this world, but a nature-based solution also provide very important social ones. The important thing is when I implement, for instance, a tree, which is the most traditional nature-based solution, even if I use trees which can shade and reducing the microclimate, the heat island effect, I can at the same time have other multiple services. For instance, absorbing air pollution, for instance, reducing the flooding, the risk of flooding, because they favor the infiltration of water, and so on. And so that's why it's very important, the NBS, provision of multiple services at the same time. Very important to understand is that nature-based solution is not only what you are implementing on the ground. Let's take a tree as an example. It's not only the planting of the tree, but it's the whole process, the whole approach, which is a multi-stakeholders approach. For instance, at urban level, we put together local administration, we put together the scientific community, we put together the citizens, and of course, also the private sector is one of the important stakeholders to be involved. So it's really what we call a multi-participatory process, which allows to have a co-design of the nature-based solution at the first stage, and then the implementation, and then the management. All these steps have to be done together in a really participatory process. That's a big keyword for the nature-based solution implementation. They have to be multi-purpose, but this is usually what happens. So even if I have in mind a target, usually I can get other side benefits from the implementation of the nature-based solution. They should be cost-effective. This in our modern society is mandatory. So I have to always make a business plan and to think what are the costs and what are the benefits which are produced by this implementation. They should be locally adapted. That's of course quite clear. If I imagine a nature-based solution for a certain area, might not be suitable for another area because of climatic issues or socio-cultural problems. Every time I have to make this multi-participatory process with the local people, with the local stakeholders. They should be easily upscaled, spatially and temporally. Usually I start with a pilots project, a small scale, but then I have to be able to enlarge either spatially or temporally, which means also to imagine what will be this NBS in the next 20 or 50 years, because usually NBS lasts for decades. And very important, the effectiveness assessments. This word will come back also in the next slides. It's another keyword by the European Commission. Once you make an NBS project, you have to be sure to monitor and to follow for all the life of the NBS. What is the effectiveness? What are the benefits that this NBS is producing? And for this reason, I had the pleasure to work. We launched this framework already 1 year in 2016 after the launch of the NBS at the European level. I was co-chairing this group, which was a quite interdisciplinary group, working on establishing a framework, an evaluation framework. So again, the European Commission wants that when I have a project on nature-based solution, I want to make a monitoring plan with standardized methods, protocols to recognize the value of this implementation, which is, I think, very crucial. As I have to say that, especially in the world of the architects, I have seen a big change in the last decades. I hope not to disturb you saying that, but I have seen that 20 or 30 years ago, architects were only looking at aesthetic purposes, but having as a first priority. Now I see there is a big change. Now architects are searching for us and asking for this standardized methodology to recognize and quantify the benefits. So that's a big change, a big contribution that we are giving as a scientific community. And so what we did, taking inspiration from the SDGs, from the Sustainable Development Goals, we identified 10, you see the 2 lines below, 10 challenge areas where we think it's important to focus the attention. So the NBS should contribute possibly to all these 10 challenge areas, or at least on most of them. The 5 on the first row are more environmental ones. You see climate mitigation, water management, coastal resilience, green space management, air quality. The 5 on the line below is more on governance and socioeconomic issues. So urban regeneration, participatory planning and governance, social justice, public health and well-being, economics, opportunities and green jobs. We had a paper. This one is a highly cited paper. It has thousands of citations. And we also had a report from the European Commission with a number of protocols, indicators, so how to deal in each of these challenge areas, how to quantify. So in the end, we want to come out with numbers to say, okay, this NBS is producing these tons of carbons, or these numbers of citizens which are basically entering the park, and so on. So the very important thing is to quantify and to give real evidence of the ecosystem services produced. The work has been improved in the following years. This was a work done by the task forces at European level. And here is I really suggest you to download this on the European Commission website. Of course, I will leave you all these slides so you can then come back on these slides and taking the links and inspiration. If you see the appendix, there is a huge list of indicators. So again, protocols, indicators to come out and evaluating, as you see the title, evaluating the impact of nature-based solutions. That's what our policy makers want. Now that we give evidence that what we are producing is producing benefits. And that's why important is to provide numbers. As communities, and again, the European Commission pushing a lot on the natural-based solution area, in the last 2 years is endorsing the launch of national hubs. So basically, they are requesting each country to create a critical mass of stakeholders, of institutions dealing with the nature-based solution. And some of the countries have launched this is really a recent initiative of the last 2 years. And Italy has been the first large country. So we arrived before Germany, before France, before UK, just to give you an example, to launch the nature-based solution hub. The European Commission gave to CNR, to our Institute of Research and IRET, the duty to coordinate this hub. We had already a number of meetings on that. I had also the pleasure to have our Ministry of Research and University, Ministry Bernini, a few months ago in our institute, and we discussed about different initiatives. In this picture, you see President of CNR and the Ministry of Research and University, just in front of the NBS Italy Hub logo. Here is the address, the email address where you can contact us and ask information. There is a website. This is now at the moment the list of founding partners. As you see, there are a number of cities, because most of the European projects at the beginning were funded having as a focus the urban environment. So cities were the main partners. So these are basically the partners, the cities who wanted to start together with us this initiative. But now the number of partners is much bigger than these ones. And so I don't have even the long list we have now at the moment. It's basically the involvement in this hub is free, is on a voluntary basis. The objective is to create critical mass at national level and then to influence the policy, to make lobby at the different institutions to highlight the importance of nature-based solution, also to build projects together, I mean, whatever you can also to exchange information, whatever you might think is means to create critical mass at country level. And for those of you who are interested, we will have next meeting in Milan, organized by the municipality, actually by the Città Metropolitana di Milano, 8 and 9 July, so next month, and also organized by Politecnico di Milano. We will have also school the 10th and the 11th of July. It's a school just for practitioners, for students, for urban planners. I'm afraid that it's already sold out, but you can write, you can search on the website and ask for information, because I mean I'm not having really the situation in real time. But I'm afraid that the school is fully booked. But I hope that for the meeting there is still place to be present on the 8th and 9th of July. So all of you are welcome. It's free participation. So now I want to give you how all this is linked with the biodiversity community. As far as I understand, you are not so close on the biodiversity community, but it's important that you understand that nature-based solution is very much connected with the biodiversity community, because means to bring nature into our cities, into our territories, even in our seas, because nature-based solution is also dealing with the marine communities. So this center is a huge initiative that is coordinated by National Research Council. Actually, it was launched by National Research Council. Now we have an administrative hub, which is the administrative coordination of the whole center. This is a huge initiative. You see 320 million euros funded by Recovery and Resilience Plan, about 2,000 researchers put together. And for instance, there is not only the people really having a biodiversity background. For instance, there are also architects. Politecnico of Milan, for instance, is involved. Pavia is also involved, even if I think is only involved I think the biodiversity and the human health department. If you're interested, I can provide you the names of the people who are involved for University of Pavia. What is very important is that this center was launched in the same year where the biodiversity was introduced in the basic articles of the Italian Constitution. This is not a negligible issue. Italy is one of the few countries in the world which has really the definition of the protection of biodiversity and the environment in the basic articles of the Constitution. And so for this reason, probably also there was a big funding also on this center. How is this organized? So there are 50 partners, so mainly research institutions and the main universities, but also we also have some private companies, for instance. There are two spokes, let's say spoke are a synonym of working package. Two large spoke on marine, the ones you see in blue, two on terrestrial biodiversity. 5 and 6 are focusing urban biodiversity. 7 and 8 are focusing on technology transfer and dissemination. And as you can imagine, we are dealing with a lot of works in in the labs, but a lot of work is done in the field, so really in living labs. So the keywords you will hear from my presentation is living labs. And so there are a lot of areas where we are concentrating the experiments and the work. We at city level, if you're really interested at city level, we have 10 cities, but also we have some areas which are terrestrial areas, but connected also. So we have some transects connecting urban areas with peri-urban areas. For instance, outside Rome, we have a transect going from the city of Rome to the Castel Porziano area, which is the presidential area just on the seacoast. And so we are following a number of parameters along the transect. The same is also in Milan. We have these peri-urban areas connected with the urban areas of Milan. And so in several cases, we are following really in a interdisciplinary work connecting coastal area, marine areas with terrestrial, with urban areas. And the NBS is a big focus of the center. So we are dealing a nature-based solution in the sea, so restoration at seabed, restoration of terrestrial areas, and restoration of urban areas. And even the connection with human health. Even the University of Pavia is involved in this issue, especially looking at the interaction of NBS with human health. This is just to say that we are really dealing in all the environments, so marine, terrestrial, and urban, and a lot of focus on living labs. All this information has allowed the birth, the launch of Carlo. I think I want to focus on this. It probably would take 2-3 hours to describe this Carlo. I just give you some couple of slides, and then if you want to go deeper into this, I can give you a contact of the person who is working with that. By the way, he's an architect. But basically, this is you can take note also of the link. The first release we just released a few weeks ago, so it's really still at a demo stage. There is a lot of work to be done in the implementation, but I think it's very important. We have different modules. So there is an NBS database, which includes an NBS selection tool and an NBS learning tool. And then we have a case study database, where you can find with a case study finder, where you can also include and insert your case studies, and you can find good practices from other case studies. This is basically the structure of this, especially I'm focusing on NBS selection tool, where basically this is a very user-friendly tool, which is intended for practitioners, for urban planners, even for citizens, where basically the user can enter. It's a digital tool which is included in this biodiversity gateway. So where it's a big platform where you can find a number of different tools. So this is specifically on NBS. The user can start selecting an objective. Then it can select the domain, so distinguishing urban domain, terrestrial domain, or marine domain. You can apply as user a number of filters and performances, and also as a target. And basically, as an output, you can get the best solutions that you can apply to your situation, to your project, and also connecting to the best NBS case studies that you can find in other parts, especially of Italy. The focus, this one is is on Italian case studies, but it also gets inspiration from the other platforms that I was showing at the beginning, which is a European, but also worldwide platform, which is the OPLA platform. So there is a much more complex presentation on this catalog. We have launched this catalog 2 weeks ago again in Milan, the forum of the National Biodiversity Future Center. And if you're interested, I can give you the name of the person who is responsible of this tool and how we are implementing this, which I think will be crucial for the restoration law, for the restoration plans. So we really rely very much on this tool. Of course, we are a research center. As a research institution, we are also doing a lot of tests in the real world. As I told you, Living Lab is a keyword for us. By the way, it's a keyword also for the European Commission. Now there are a lot of projects funding of the Living Lab. These are the main Living Lab we have at terrestrial level. So we are working especially on the degraded environments. Degraded environments means for us, for instance, areas affected by storms. For those of you, for instance, the Vaia storm on the Alps, where they have been destroyed by a storm, thousands of hectares of forest. We are working on post-fire areas. We are working on coastal degraded areas, on riparian areas, for instance, the Po River. We are working on contaminated areas. We are working again in Po Valley with areas with high agricultural pressure. And particular area of investigation, we are working together with the companies realizing solar power plants, photovoltaic systems, and we are implementing basically protocols to have photovoltaic systems more and more sustainable, more biodiversity, with more biodiversity included. And so this will be a contribution we are giving in a specific field, but we think is quite important because now, especially in Italy, especially in central and southern Italy, we are observing a huge increase of areas occupied by solar systems. So we want to have them more and more biodiverse, more sustainable. In terms of, maybe you're not so much interested in this, I'm going quite fast. All the activities we are doing in terms of ecosystem restoration, what does it mean for us to do activity in these sites? So we are following the restoration programs, for instance, in areas affected by fire. And these are 2 case studies, one in Tuscany region and one in Abruzzo region, where basically we starting from the selection of the material, we make a baseline assessment. So what are the conditions at soil level, at vegetation level, before the planting, before the restoration. And then after selecting the material, which means also making a genetic analysis at the nursery, we then follow the restoration of these areas with remote sensing, with equipment to see the ecophysiological status of the vegetation, the soil, and so on. Similar activities we are doing, for instance, in the post-storm sites. Vaia was a storm which affected the Alps, I think a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, which destroyed thousands of hectares. And now we are working together with, for instance, University of Padova and other partners to see how the restoration of these areas is going on. And we are following and monitor these NBS approaches on these post-storm sites. In the Po River, this is a huge project also funded by Ministry of Environment, where basically they have 300 million euros to restore some areas, about 56 areas of the Po Valley along the Po River. which for those who are not Italian is the longest river in Italy. And we have some case studies where we are following how these restoration activities are occurring along the Po River. And again, following these activities with different techniques, including remote sensing techniques. This is this activity with which was mentioning with the solar systems, power plants, where we're basically following how much is disturbing the realization of a solar power plant, how much is disturbing the field, how much is disturbing the biodiversity, what we can do to improve even after the realization of a solar power plant, the biodiversity of a station of these solar plants. And we have different case studies with different companies, even very big companies. And so we want to achieve at the end of the project a protocol guidelines which will guide in the future the realization of these power plants, not only having attention on the energy production, which of course the priority number one, but also taking a focus on the environment, on biodiversity, and even on carbon fluxes in these ecosystems. We are realizing huge facilities, for instance, in CNR Monte Libretti, which is close to Rome, research area. We are realizing very innovative greenhouses where basically we will use those greenhouses to make a test where basically we create we will manipulate the environments in terms of air quality, in terms of microclimate, and we will test the best species that we can have for the future. We know that the climate is changing. We will have, especially our cities, we will have we will be warmer and warmer with more air pollutants. So we want to use some of those greenhouses to simulate urban conditions of the future and to test what will be the best varieties of plants which can survive and tolerate the urban conditions of the future, just to give some examples. So to use manipulation, and we will have also robotic phenomic system, which means by some robots to check in real time the response of the plants to these conditions that we are testing in these greenhouses. We have also in the center some case studies in cities. For instance, we have case studies in Milan, in Florence, and Campobasso. Here are the main activities which are carried out. For instance, starting from the mapping and monitoring of the degraded areas of the cities, selecting the species for the interventions, and also connecting with the nursery supply chain, so where the material for the restoration is coming, testing the species, the varieties in response to different environmental factors, and then different kind of analysis, including the relationship between biodiversity and ecosystem function. So we come back again to what we were showing in the previous slides, making an assessment of the ecosystem services produced. There is a strong attention in urban environment, so in line with the targets of the restoration law, with the decline, stopping the decline of the pollinators and promoting biodiversity. Again, for this we have case studies in Milan, in Rome, in Turin. Here are the main activities which are carried out that we can read together. So defining, for instance, the biomarkers of quality and well-being of pollinators, evaluation of the response to stress factors, definition of biodiversity management strategies for pollinators, and so on. I think we don't have time to read all of them, but again, I will leave you the slides to read what we are doing in respect of the pollinators. And then a big initiative is a big attention, a big focus is on the use of MBS for the air quality amelioration and carbon neutrality. Means to have different test area. For instance, this is an example of Florence. And the slide you see is from the microscope to see, for instance, how much plant NBS can be used for the uptake of particulate matter. Particulate matter, you know, it's a very dangerous pollutant for human health, particularly the small one. We can detect which is the best species to absorb, to take up particulate matter. Also other pollutants like ozone, nitrogen oxides, the BVOCs that you see in these slides means biogenic volatile organic compounds, means there are some plants which emit compounds which can alter the chemistry of the atmosphere. So we should know in particular conditions it's better to use one species rather than another species. And also a lot of attention also to carbon, to soil. You know, carbon neutrality is a big target in Europe. We want to have our cities which are carbon neutral by 2050. And so that's a big contribution by nature-based solution in terms of shading, in terms of getting plants and nature-based solution. We can increase the carbon uptake and the carbon storage. And we have models like this one, R3 model, which we are testing with you have to imagine very long databases, for instance, which is the best tree species to take up carbon, which is the best tree species to take up a specific air pollutant, like can be ozone, particulate matter, and so on. We have all this information, we are testing, we are implementing models and testing in real cities, in real situations. We are doing also activities like this one in Naples, the urban park of Capodimonte. It's a huge park, more than 100 hectares of park, where we have installed a tower where we measure the fluxes of carbon, of air pollutants, and we measure real time, 24 hours a day, every day of the year, how much this park of Capodimonte is contributing to the air quality of the city of Naples. This is again another paper that we have published showing how much particulate matter can be taken up by the park of Capodimonte and how this is varies in different parts of the day and of the year. Castel Porziano, another huge case studies. So it's the residential estate just between Rome and the sea coast. We had we can consider a peri-urban area, very much affected by the city of Rome. Here we are testing. We have the dieback of the pine forest. So we have lost all the pine inside because of a pest, and it has been cut, harvested all the pine forest, and now there is a restoration program. We have installed this kind of towers to check what is the carbon fluxes, the CO2 uptake by these different kinds of ecosystem, including the restoration program. So these kind of activities, living lab activities, is now paying the attention very much also at political level. Depends on which kind of politics, of course, but for instance, 2 months ago, we had the possibility to show these activities to King Charles, who is very much interested to establishing living lab in different parts of the world with us. And just 2 weeks ago with President Mattarella, we were showing these activities in Castel Porziano, which I remind is really his presidential estate. So it's his home. And so he's very proud that we are having this living lab just inside the Castel Porziano area. Just for information, I don't think you are interested in marine environment, but we are also working a lot in marine environment with our colleagues in this center. So doing a restoration of marine areas, and these are the species and the different marine ecosystems that we are restoring and that we are testing in different parts of Italy. I'm going fast because I suppose you're not interested in marine environment. This is a human health connection, NBS. This is one of the top where University of Paris is involved, is connected with the NBS for basically air pollution mitigation, and how much is this related to the human health, to the effect on cellular response to stress. There is a word, the exposome, which is basically a number of information that you can get to understand what is the impact of NBS on the human health. I want to finish and finalize because I want to leave some minutes for questions if you are curious, but we just released a few months ago in March in an event together with the Ministry of Environment and ISPRA, which is the institution connected with the Ministry of Environment, this report on restoration. Unfortunately, this is in Italian because it was produced by the National Center. And I think it's quite interesting because also in this case, it's quite user-friendly. It's not really a scientific document, but is a document intended for people interested in restoration programs at all levels, including even the citizens. So it includes a number of forms on planning and implementation for ecological restoration. So just to give you examples, there are forms for the evaluation. So what are the parameters that you should consider when you want to start a restoration planning, a restoration plan? What are the things that you should consider in terms of planning, design? I think you as architects, you know quite well these things, but I think there are also some elements that maybe you're not considering in terms of assessment, monitoring, indicators, as I was telling before, which is very important to consider already at the first stages, because then you can follow, and again, I insist, giving evidence that what you are doing is really an investment. And then the monitoring and evaluation phase, the management and maintenance phase at the end. Okay, this is just to give you a brief and fast overview. So conclusions. Okay, this is focusing on this center, which is a huge initiative, which will continue after the Recovery and Resilience Plan. The scientific community of the center has already started to contribute and to work on the implementation of the restoration law at urban level, at terrestrial level, and marine levels. I was pushing a lot on the fact that NBS is one of the best approach for the implementation of the restoration law. And I think all of us can be involved in this process in all the European member states with our different roles can have a very important role. And living labs, as I said, is now the keyword. So basically having areas where I can test our interventions, and don't forget the priorities. Must be biodiversity, must be climate change, carbon neutrality, these are the priorities which are set by the European Commission. Okay, 55 minutes on my watch. I thank you, all of you, for the attention, and let me thank also my people of the National Biodiversity Center, in particular, the people of my institute and of my group. Contacts, my email, and also my personal website. Thank you very much for the attention.
Okay, so thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So thank you very much. It was an opportunity, big opportunity for us to have you here with this lecture, even if online. That was really very interesting, and we appreciate so much. I asked the students or other professors if they have any question. Is there anybody that asked something? Okay, I may have the question. Since we are doing a summer school, since we are architects, okay, we are focusing in this summer school on an urban area, which is the city center of the city of Pavia. And for us, our challenge is to introduce NBS and the natural water cycle, but as architects, okay, of course, we do not know everything about biodiversity, but we try to introduce NBS inside the historical cities, okay, and medium-sized cities. So since I've been studying a lot and I saw your presentation, many of the case studies in urban areas are metropolitan areas. So may I ask you if there are any case studies all over the world in historical city centers of introducing NBS, and particularly in not so big cities like metropolitan areas where it probably is easier to introduce NBS? Because I've been also searching on OPLA, Neturvation, but I can find in small cities, but on peripheral area, not in the historical city center. So is this a challenge for in the world experience, or they don't talk about it? It's just metropolitan area. It's just thanks.
As you imagine, it's a big challenge. I don't have to tell you, you know better than me as architect. Honestly, I'm not aware of case studies really in the city centers, especially in Italy, where we have such narrow areas, such protected historical areas. But I think I can suggest you, if you're interested, to come in Milan next month. We are together with Politecnico of Milan, so we are especially together with other architects, so the groups of Stefano Boeri and other people as well, Eugenio Morello and others, who probably know more than me on this. And so that's probably, if you don't know them, I can introduce them, and we can see together if we can find. Now I cannot answer you because I don't have really case studies to reply. You can check if in the new case studies which are included in this NBS Italian Catatool database, they introduce some of them. As I said, it's a work in progress. But I imagine that most of the activities are more on the outside the city center, because it's especially, you know, that because it's now we are following this huge project that is funded by Ministry of Environment, funding the 14 metropolitan areas. You probably heard that there are 14 metropolitan areas in Italy which are funded for large programs of afforestation, but those have as a rule to invest in areas which are at least 1 hectare. And so to have an area which is at least 1 hectare in Italian downtowns, as you can imagine, is really challenging. So that's, but probably there are some case studies. I can imagine, especially on the green roofs, communities on green roofs case studies, we might find some interesting situations. So at green roofs level, I think we might find some interesting situations in downtown. So I'm pretty sure that we can provide, not today, but we can provide you examples.
Okay, thank you very much.
And of course I can give you the slides so that you can share.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I don't know if there are other questions. I just add one thing. Carlo, if you can a little bit explain better what is a living lab, and if you can figure out if it's possible to have a living lab in historical city center to monitoring what?
Yes, well, a living lab, it's really, I would say, perfectly connected with the NBS approach. Because the living lab means basically what I was telling for the NBS. So putting together a number of stakeholders, starting to build together with the other stakeholders and Living Lab, so the participatory process. As I said, you can have now. I have a background in forestry, so sometimes I push a lot on a tree as a best NBS. There is also a number of reasons why I say that, not only because I'm from forestry sciences, but you can take a Living Lab, also a green roof. I can take a park which has a specific drainage technology, which combine NBS with more technological engineering tools. All of those can be Living Labs, can be NBS. Of course, to be a real Living Lab, you should have some, let's say, living organisms. So normally plants or like bioremediation tools, which also can use in some cases, but living means living in the implementation and living in the sense that you put together a number of actors to work on that. And the main principle is what I was showing in the slides, to organize a monitoring plan. So making assessments of the baseline. Okay, what is the conditions at the time zero? What will be the conditions at the end of the implementation? How this will survive in the next years, in the next decades? What are the indicators and protocols to assess the benefits that those are producing? Make a business plan, make a life cycle assessment to see all the pros and cons of these interventions, which means to show to our funding agency that they invested €1, but that they will have back 8, 30 euros. These are all the things of a Living Lab.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. You have another question, of course? You can come here.
Wait a moment.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Ciao, hi for me. I'm Steffi Papaglia. My name is Steffi Papaglia. I'm a PhD in Polytechnic actually. And my thesis is about natural-based solutions and defining the design guidelines. So since we're talking about the design phase, I'm questioning also in my research and in every project that we're participating, how we can validate beforehand the implementation of NBS. So mainly we can use simulation tools. How are you working on this aspect of validating beforehand when it is from this catalog in every situation? We're talking about air pollution also, material climate mitigation.
Well, yeah, good questions. Of course, you cannot have an ante operam validation. So, I mean, before implementation, you cannot really make a validation in the real terms. I mean, for us in the scientific world, you can validate only once you have demonstrated, and so that means that you have to wait for the NBS to grow up and to be fully operative. But what you can do is what I would suggest is to, I mean, if you want to validate the project and the planning and the design, you can use the tools that I was showing, like OPLA and now the Italian one that we are implementing, and to see what they have done in similar case studies. So where they have done something similar that has been working over the years. Then you can work also in terms of modeling tools. There are some models which can estimate and forecast the growth. Like in US, they have implementing tools which forecast what will happen in the next 20 and 30 years. And those, they give you the estimations of what will be the ecosystem services provided in 20 years, in 30 years. Of course, for me, that is not a validation, because the validation you will have in 20 or 30 years when you are touching. But let's say you can validate the project in the sense that you have similar situations and you have anyway some numbers that you can bring as a proof that you have done an attempt to see what will happen in the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? Okay, so let's go on work. Thank you very much, Carlo. I hope we will have the opportunity to meet the 8 and 9 in July in Milan. And really thank you for your intervention. It was very interesting for us. You know, architects are expected to be not expert of anything, but they have to took from everywhere, no? So, information.
Yeah, I mean, sorry if I was mentioning sometimes the architects, but I mean, working a lot with the architects and have seen a change in the last 20, 30 years, as I said during the presentation. So I'm really glad that now we are working really together, because 20 years ago, you can imagine architects were treating people from forestry as no, I tell you in Italian, as a zappaterra, okay? now I see that we are working together. I'm very glad on that, and so I take joke of this, but I'm really glad that now we are really multidisciplinary.
Thank you very much indeed.